Part 7. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 61. Chapter 61. A wave of new fans. The clothes were finally almost dry, and the two of them put out the fire, picked up their things, and started again. After helping each other across a river just now, Zhang Lingzi felt that Zhang Kaiwen was more relaxed in front of her. The specific manifestation is that this guy talks more. Not only did she feel this way, but the audience in the live broadcast room also noticed it. The last time I saw my brother like this was when he was on a show with his former teammates in the esports circle. I heard that my brother and his teammates have been training together for more than 3 years, and they are more relaxed with each other. My brother and Zhang Lingzi have only been together for a few days, and he can be so relaxed. Isn't Zhang Lingzi a woman like this? Is there a poison? It must be the charm of your personality. Your younger brother has already turned against you and is now like this. Why are UN fans still so stubborn? The fans of Zhang Kaiwen who were told what he was thinking couldn't help but reflect silently, and finally found that there was really no way to refute it. Then they can reluctantly follow their younger brother and like Zhang Lingzi. The first step is to follow Zhang Lingzi's social account. Just when they touched Zhang Lingzi's homepage, they quietly clicked follow, then browsed the news under the homepage, and finally silently chose to exit. Let's watch Zhang Lingzi in the live broadcast room. She looks more comfortable. Lu Zhengzheng was the first to notice the sudden increase in the number of Zhang Lingzi's fans. When she clicked on the new fans and took a look, she suddenly realized, Sister Tong, Sister Zixi has attracted all Zhang Kaiwen's fans. Well, you see, the tens of thousands of fans that have just been added are fans of Zhang Kaiwen. Tong Yu took the phone handed over by Lu Zhengzheng and looked at it. After logging out, she scrolled down to the latest news. She found that it was still a selfie of Zhang Lingzi with her eyes and pouted lips that she had posted before the accident, accompanied by a very hypocritical copywriting. Hasn't she posted anything during this time? This is not like Zhang Lingzi. In order to fight for the autonomy of her account, this girl almost had a big fight with her and even broke into Mr. Xiao's office. With her arrogant and turbulent temper, they were really afraid that this girl would say something they shouldn't say on the internet, but they still compromised in the end. As for Zhang Lingzi's use of this account to post some inexplicable selfies and updates from time to time, she followed them for a period of time without worry and found that although these updates were a bit childish and embarrassing, fortunately they were measured and nothing should be posted, and she actually gained something from it. She would turn a blind eye to some fans who felt down to earth. It's really true. Lu Zhengzheng didn't realize it before Tong Yu reminded her of this, but now that she thought about it, letting grass grow under her account really didn't look like Sister Zixi's usual style. She frowned and thought for a while. It seems that it's not just for posting news. Since Sister Zixi woke up from an injury some time ago, except for the first 2 days, she would hold her phone and look at it from time to time. After that, except for making phone calls and videos, she rarely used it at other times. Cell phone. Tong Yu took a breath. Are you sure? Lu Zhengzheng hesitated for a moment, but nodded affirmatively. I helped Sister Zixi keep her mobile phone before recording the show, and I also saw the usage time of her mobile phone, which was less than an hour a day. Tong Yu, who usually uses her mobile phone for more than 10 hours a day, I kind of want to know how she endures it now. Are there any young people these days who use mobile phones for less than 1 hour a day? Zhang Lingzi didn't know that her agent and assistant had even noticed how much time she used her mobile phone every day. The reason why she didn't use it so little was actually very simple. Although she came to modern times through someone else's body, and even received part of the original body's memory, and is now gradually adapting to this society that is completely different from the ancient times, the nearly 50 years of life in her previous life will not be the same even if she is reborn. The obliterated past. She has not yet learned how to use the mobile phone, which is a new and refreshing gadget that refreshes her cognition. In addition, She is used to being cautious. After hearing Lu Zhengzheng say that people have no privacy on the internet and that their words may be recorded, she naturally became more resistant. Hatchback reasons are superimposed, and it is normal not to be addicted. Sister Zixi, do you see a big beehive over there? Zhang Lingzi raised her eyes and looked in the direction pointed by Zhang Kaiwen's finger. Not far ahead, I saw a honeycomb larger than a human head hanging on the branch of a big tree, and there were many bees circling nearby. There happened to be a few locust trees in bloom growing nearby. No wonder the smell in the air became sweeter as we walked further this way. Seeing the clusters of white Sephora japonica flowers, Zhang Lingzi thought of the bowl of Sephora japonica noodle soup and steamed rice noodles she drank when she accidentally missed Sutta during a private visit incognito and stayed in a common people's home. Sephora flower buns. This Sephora japonica not only blooms beautifully and tastes fragrant, but it is also edible and delicious. Pick some locust flowers and take them away. Zhang Kaiwen immediately rubbed the palms of his hands and said, I'll do it. As he spoke, he chose a locust tree that seemed easier to climb, hugged the trunk and jumped up flexibly, and then jumped again. Zhang Lingzi, be careful. She had no intention of climbing a tree to pick them. She only planned to tie rocks with a fishing line and throw the lower branches down, then pull down the branches and pick some. Since Zhang Kai volunteered, she could only follow below. Under the worried eyes of the audience in the live broadcast room, Zhang Kaiwen successfully climbed up the locust tree, stood on the branches and began to select the best blooming locust flowers. After picking them, he threw them in the direction of Zhang Lingzi on the ground. Sister Zixi, caught it? Zhang Lingzi waved to him, just throw it away. Zhang Kaiwen picked 2 bunches from the tree and stuffed them into his mouth. When Zhang Lingzi said enough, he was still a little unfinished. Finally, after stuffing his mouth with the freshly picked locust flowers, he reluctantly prepared to get off the tree. The result is halfway down, and extreme joy leads to sorrow. The branches under his feet suddenly swayed, and as soon as the solace of his feet slipped, he subconsciously reached out to reach for something to stabilize his body, but he overestimated his own weight. The branches under his feet finally failed to support him and broke with a click. Just when everyone was so frightened by the scene that they almost screamed, Zhang Kaiwen almost stepped on the branch next to him, swayed back and forth a few times and finally stabilized his body. This incident scared him into a cold sweat, and he didn't dare to continue to be cool and have fun, so he carefully and cautiously slid down from the tree. His feet finally landed smoothly on the ground, and he was ready to breathe a sigh of relief. However, this breath was only half relieved. The second after he landed safely, something else fell to the ground. There was a soft pop sound. Zhang Lingzi was the first to hear the sound and turned to look over. When Zhang Kaiwen realized that he was about to look over, Zhang Lingzi quickly slapped him on the back and said, "Run." End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 62. Chapter 62 Revenge B. The guests were running wildly, and so were the photographers. The cameras shook for a while, and the 2 figures were blurred over and over again, making all the viewers in the live broadcast room feel dizzy. However, even if they couldn't see the camera clearly, it didn't stop them from guessing what would happen to the guests. The heavy breathing was mixed with a lingering and dense buzzing sound, which was enough to make one's scalp numb. That one that fell on the ground just now was a hornet's nest, right? No need to ask, if it weren't for the wasp, how could the photographer have run away in such a mess? Oh my God, that hornet's nest just now is not small. The branch that my brother accidentally broke must have hit the hornet's nest when it fell. Hurry up and run towards the water. By the way, just jump into the river before insects like bees are afraid of water and dare not enter the water to sting people. It's all Zhang Lingzi's fault. You had to pick Sephora flowers properly, otherwise this unreasonable disaster wouldn't have happened. It's not entirely John Lindsay's fault. Sephora japonica is also a kind of food. It's normal to pick and eat it when you encounter it. It was just an accident to bump into a hornet's nest. But this accident can obviously not happen if you get stung by accident. It will hurt and itch, not to mention how uncomfortable it will be. The audience member who sent this barrage didn't know if the crow's mouth suddenly possessed him. As soon as he finished typing and posted it, he heard Zhang Yuanyan yell on the screen, "My ears, my ears." His hands shook in fright and he almost threw the phone away. Noticing that Zhang Kaiwen stopped suddenly, Zhang Lingzi also followed suit, quickly reached out to hold his arm and continued running wildly on the road. After a wave of life and death, he finally returned to the river he passed before. This time neither of them hesitated at all. They held their noses with one hand and jumped directly into the river. There was a splash of water, followed by 2 more splashes of water, and the screen in the live broadcast room shook for a while and finally settled on a piece of green grass. After a few seconds, a barrage appeared in the live broadcast room. "Did you throw the camera on the shore before diving?" With the first item, the second item and the third item followed. This time, the photographer has to be given a chicken leg. This is a purely innocent disaster. "I didn't forget to put down the camera before diving." This professionalism is also worthy of praise. Where is the director? No one is filming anymore. Where is the drone? Li Shuo was in a hurry and ordered the staff to switch to drone shooting. After giving the order, he couldn't help but raise his hand to wipe his face. Everyone can see that he is a little tired at this meeting. Although other teams did not go well, and even the guests were not in good condition. After all, this was survival and not fun, but at least there were not too many twists and turns. Unlike the team of Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwen, it can be said that the situation is constant, challenging the limit of his endurance every time. "Zhang Kaiwen, this kid, why are his hands so dark?" The drone finally came in handy amidst the calls. As soon as he saw it, 2 cameras were lying on the ground on the shore, with a backpack used to hold the photographer's daily equipment thrown next to them. There is a swarm of unwilling bees hovering on the river, and occasionally a few bubbles will rise from the water. The clothes are baked in vain. "I think I'll have to deal with this all day today. Maybe I can enjoy Zhang Lingzi's flying arrows and fish shooting later. Let's just camp by the river." Zhang Kaiwen rolled his eyes because he couldn't bear it. He couldn't stand it anymore and his head popped up. As soon as he took a long breath, he saw a few bees flying towards this direction, and he quickly dived back into the water. Zhang Lingzi held it in for more than 10 seconds longer than him, and quickly came out of the water to take a breath. The 2 photographers were not far away from them when they jumped into the river. They also came out of the water to take a breath, and then quickly dived into the water. After going back and forth a few times, even the audience began to admire the perseverance of the bees. "It's been almost 5 minutes, and I haven't given up yet. After all, my family has been destroyed, and maybe there is still honey that I work so hard to make. If it were me, I would work hard." Well, that makes sense. Looking at the head on the screen that pops up to breathe and then quickly dives back into the water, the audience is making lively comments while wanting to see how long the swarm of bees can last. "Hey, it seems like someone is coming this way. Are they other guests from the program team?" It seems to be the guest named Su Zhao, who is suspected to be a veteran. "Don't come over here, there's a swarm of revenge bees here." Su Zhao noticed something strange earlier than they thought. He had noticed traces of someone passing by, so he followed them all the way. Seeing the drone hanging over the river from a distance, coupled with the camera and backpack on the shore, he stopped and then noticed the group of bees that were unwilling to leave. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. He didn't know which team it was, but it actually provoked such a group of little guys. You have to know that even if he meets these little guys, he can only use every method to cover up his own smell. But it's not a bad idea to jump into a river and use water to cover up your smell. After waiting for a moment, he finally watched the little guys leave. After making sure that the last one had flown away, he walked to the shore. You must know that although bees are small and will die if they sting someone, they still recognize the appearance of humans and have a firm desire for revenge. Shouting towards the water, the bees have flown away, you can come out now. John Kaiwan was the first to pop up, and after taking a few deep breaths greedily, he looked at the people standing on the shore. Sue, Sue. What's going on with Sue? His brain seems to be a little congested from holding in his breath. Zhang Lingzi also stuck out her head and answered, Su Zhao. John Kaiwan nodded immediately, yes, that's the name. Hello, brother Su. I just made you laugh, haha. Zhang Lingzi walked towards the shore with her feet up. Seeing this, Su Zhao knelt down and handed over a hand. Zhang Lingzi was about to climb ashore when she saw the hand being handed over to her. She was silent for a moment, stretched out her hand to hold it, and used her strength to climb ashore. Thanks. You're welcome. Then he easily pulled John Kaiwan and two photographers up. Su Zhao stood up and explained the reason for his appearance here. I noticed traces of someone passing nearby half an hour ago, and followed the traces here. I'll see you soon. John Kaiwan wiped the water on his face. I just went up to the tree to pick locust flowers, and I accidentally knocked off the hornet's nest on the tree. I definitely didn't mean to cause such an embarrassing situation at this point. He suddenly turned his head to look. Xiang Zhang Lingzi, Sister Zixi, are our things still over there at the locust tree? Zhang Lingzi closed her eyes and nodded towards him. I put it on the ground when I picked up the locust flowers, and I didn't have time to take them with me when I ran. So, we have to go back. John Kaiwan felt that his eyes were darkened. He already has a psychological shadow. I used to think the little bees were so cute, but now they are so scary. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 63. Chapter 63, Super Accurate and Super Cruel. The top priority is to deal with John Kaiwan's ear that was stung by a bee. It only took a while, but the ear was not only red, but also visibly swollen. Taking out a magnifying glass that had never been used in his pocket, John Kai laughed at himself. I thought I wouldn't use it anymore, but it turned out that it was just waiting for me. With the magnifying glass, Zhang Lingzi easily helped him find and pull out the stinger left by the bee. After treating the wound, he played with the magnifying glass for a while before returning it to John Kaiwan. This thing is quite useful. John Kaiwan covered his ears and stared. What is your unfinished tone? Su Zhao lit a fire aside and waved to the two people who were staring at each other. Come and warm yourself by the fire. It just rained and the temperature is still a bit low. Be careful to catch a cold. Zhang Lingzi and John Kaiwan walked over and thanked them, then sat down in front of the fire and started to warm themselves up. When it was almost done, John Kaiwan stood up. Afraid of returning home, but apart from the photographer who was only responsible for taking pictures, Su Zhao, Zhang Lingzi, and him were the only ones left. Su Zhao was just passing by, and Zhang Lingzi was from the girl's home. Naturally, he had to shoulder the arduous task of returning to a dangerous situation to retrieve his things. I'll go to the locust tree and get our things back. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zhao clapped his hands and stood up. I'll go with you. No need, brother Su. John Kaiwan was moved but still refused. I can get it back by myself. Didn't you say that a big honeycomb fell down? I'm going to take it back, just to add some flavor to my mouth. John Kaiwan looked at Su Zhao and his eyes suddenly changed from moved to admired. Na reminded, brother Su, that hive is not small, and there are many bees. Do you really want to go? Just to eat some honey, you really don't want to go? Let's go and see. Seeing that he could not be persuaded, John Kaiwan had to give up, but he felt relieved. With someone to accompany him, his courage regained a lot. Then let's leave now. There's no rush, let's make some preparations first. Su Zhao walked to the river bank as he spoke, and suddenly reached into the water. When he pulled it back, there was already a ball of dark mud in the palm of his hand. Then when John Kaiwan didn't understand why, he smeared the mud on his face without hesitation. Just like applying a facial mask, in addition to the eyes, nostrils, and mouth, even the ears are taken care of. John Kaiwan looked at his dark and expressionless face and couldn't help but open his mouth. Su Zhao applied it on himself and dug out some more mud, and handed it to John Kaiwan. I suggest you apply it too, it will have some effect. John Kaiwan looked at the black mud that exuded a pungent mud smell, touched his painful and itchy ears, gritted his teeth, and said, I'll apply it. Soon, another black face was born. Zhang Lingzi looked at the two warriors who came to say goodbye to her. Thank you for your hard work, I'll stay here to catch fish for you. An excellent hunter will never let his weapons leave his body, so although other things were thrown away in the locust tree, the bow and arrows were still firmly on her back. If you can't deal with the little bees, then you can only practice with the fish in the river. For safety reasons, the two photographers did not follow the operation, but directly commandeered the drone. Su Zhao's photographer also stayed behind. There was only one guest left at the scene, so the shots in the two live broadcast rooms naturally fell on Zhang Lingzi alone. Su Zhao is the kind of person who does more and talks less. When he was alone before, he could not even say a few words for a whole day. The audience in his live broadcast room can be said to be the most Buddhist and worldly among all the viewers. An uncontested group. Now looking at Zhang Lingzi in the live broadcast room, the barrage became a little more active. Some people entered the live broadcast room in the middle of filming and did not know who the guests were beforehand. At this moment, they asked, is this girl also a guest? She looks so soft and weak, can she persevere? Immediately afterwards, someone helped to clear up the confusion. This is Zhang Lingzi. Unlike Brother Su, who is an amateur, this one is a star. As for her ability to persist until now, to be honest, I am quite surprised. There was no need to doubt Su Ai's ability among the three female guests on the show, but Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Ziyu looked like a burden. She didn't think they could last long, so as soon as the show started filming, she only followed the other three groups, and never visited the live broadcast rooms of Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Ziyu. But she didn't expect that Su Zhao would run into Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwan's team halfway. Zhang Lingzi was still there and seemed to be in good condition, which was beyond her expectation. What surprised everyone was yet to come. Zhang Kaiwan and Su Zhao left. After Zhang Lingzi added enough firewood to the fire to ensure that it would burn out in a while, she took out her arrow tied with a fishing line and walked to the shore. The audience in Su Zhao's live broadcast room was confused. What is Zhang Lingzi doing? She just said she wanted to catch fish, how to catch it? Looking at the arrow in her hand, I suddenly made a bold guess. Could it be that? Compared to the buzz in Su Zhao's live broadcast room, everyone in Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwan's live broadcast room was much more excited. I thought I wouldn't see Zhang Lingzi's version of flying arrows and shooting fish should I thank those little bees. The screen recording mode has been turned on, Zhang Lingzi is going to hit every target. It's up to you to edit the material tonight. While Zhang Lingzi threw the arrow into the water, someone else was typing, is this really accurate? Before he could click send, the arrow that plunged into the water suddenly sank. As Zhang Lingzi hooked the fishing line with her fingers and pulled it back. The arrow was pulled back, and along with it was a fish that had been stabbed through and was already motionless. Facts speak louder than words, and the typed words were silently deleted. I really admire this accuracy. Maybe it's just a coincidence. For those of you who are new to the live broadcast room above, I suggest you continue watching. If you want to grill enough fish for 3 people, you definitely can't have just one fish. Zhang Lingzi took the fish off the arrow and put it aside. Holding the arrow in his hand, he continued to wander on the shore looking for the second target. The photographer consciously stood aside and even breathed softly subconsciously, for fear of disturbing the fish in the water and affecting Zhang Lingzi's performance. When Zhang Kaiwen and Su Zhao rushed back, one carrying the things they left behind and the other carrying a large honeycomb, they saw no less than 5 fish on the grass on the shore. There are so many, Sister Zixi, you can't catch all the fish in this piece, right? Su Zhao's eyes also fell on those fish. After putting down the honeycomb, he picked up one of them. When he saw the hole made by the arrow in the fish, he looked at the holes in the remaining fish that were killed by the same part. His eyebrows are slightly darker. This method is accurate and ruthless enough. Even he dare not say that he can achieve this level. Then I thought uncontrollably, if this happened to a human being. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 64. Chapter 64, Eat, Why Don't You Eat? Zhang Lingzi took the fish he had just caught off the arrow and turned around to meet Su Zhao's gaze. The two looked at each other silently for 2 seconds. Good accuracy. Excellent award. Han Zhang Kaiwen took the fish over diligently, not realizing at all that the two of them had just had a look at each other. Su Zhao is also very good at aiming. He can shoot a rabbit several meters away with a dagger. I feel like these two people can compete. The process should be very exciting. Is anyone in Zhang Lingzi's family a doctor? The part she chose when pricking the fish is just right to destroy the fish's nerves. This accuracy is indeed worthy of praise. Is it true or not? But this fish really doesn't move every time I bring it up. When I cook fish, it can still jump out even after it's been put out of the pot. I want to learn. The discussion on the barrage was lively, and the 3 people in the live broadcast room were already handling the food on hand with great efficiency. Su Zhao could use his dagger to handle a fish in almost a minute. Zhang Kaiwen looked at his neat technique and was dazzled by it. He wanted to follow suit, but ended up in a hurry. Brother, have you ever been a fish killer before? No, but I did spend 2 years in the cooking class. Cooking class? Zhang Kaiwen's eyes flashed with stars. When I first met you, I thought you had a very similar temperament. He did not continue what he said, but both Zhang Lingzi sitting next to him and the audience in the live broadcast room already understood. This is a disguised reveal of his previous career. And now that he can reveal it, it means he has retired from the army. Brother, salute you. Zhang Kaiwen said what the audience in the live broadcast room also wanted to say. Su Zhao only waved his hand. It should be. The processed fish was threaded onto branches and grilled over the fire, and the 3 men continued to process the large honeycomb. Su Zhao dug out a lot of fat bee pupae and said, "This is also delicious when grilled." Zhang Kaiwen glanced at the little thing that was still squirming in his hand, and felt panicked. He quickly took a step back and said, "I refuse." Su Zhao raised his head and glanced at him. No luck. After saying that, he looked at Zhang Lingzi, who was concentrating on getting honey. You guys get busy first. There are a lot of bee pupae here. I'll go find a stone slab. Bee pupae are still tender and will be burned directly if put directly on the fire. It is best to use a stone board to separate them. Zhang Kaiwen watched him leave and pointed to the bee pupa that was still squirming aside. Sister Zixi, do you want to eat this? Zhang Lingzi was so busy that she didn't even raise her head and replied casually, "Eat it, why don't you eat it? It's delicious when it's baked and crispy." Zhang Kaiwen. Is he the only one who is not normal? Su Zhao quickly found a suitable stone slab, went to the river to clean it, and placed it next to the fire to heat. The fish on the shelf was turned over, and when it was almost cooked, it was brushed with a layer of honey that had just been taken off. Once it was roasted by the flames, the fresh and honey aroma suddenly swept everyone's noses. John Kaiwan couldn't help but swallowed. It was too embarrassing, so he forced himself to look away. Why is there still one fish left? I left it specially to make Sephora fish soup later. Memory of the bowl of Sephora flour noodle soup she once drank. After the fish was roasted and taken away, Zhang Lingzi took out her small metal pot and hung it above the fire. She recalled the steps of the farmer's wife making soup, and began to boil the filleted fish in an orderly manner. Zhang Kaiwan was no longer surprised no matter what Zhang Lingzi did. He looked at her skillful filleting of fish and praised her. Sister Zixi, your knife skills are so good and your cooking skills are superb. Zhang Lingzi paused for a moment. I am good at knife skills, but I don't get it from cooking. Su Zhao was placing beef pupae on the heated stone slab. After placing them, he turned to look over. He can guarantee that this is definitely not the way to hold a kitchen knife. Would you like to eat? Zhang Lingzi was putting fresh Sephora flowers into the boiled fish soup, and handed over a grilled beef pupa skewer skewered with clean branches. Her eyes extended from the cluster of beef pupae to Su Zhao's face. She thanked her and took it, and without saying a word, she ate one under the gazes of Zhang Kaiwan and Su Zhao. After finishing the meal, he nodded and commented, crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, the heat is just right. Su Zhao smiled faintly and handed the second string to Zhang Kaiwan. Although he watched Zhang Lingzi eat it, and it seemed to taste pretty good, Zhang Kaiwan still couldn't forget the way they squirmed when looking at the slightly yellowed beef pupae in front of him. He really couldn't accept it, and waved his hands hurriedly. This it's better for you to eat, I'll just eat the grilled fish and drink the fish soup. Su Zhao raised his eyebrows. This was the first time an ordinary person had eaten something like beef pupae. He didn't force it, that's a pity. You missed a delicious meal. This kind of thing is not often found in the jungle. The key nutritional value is still high. Zhang Kaiwan still refused. In the end, Su Zhao and Zhang Lingzi shared half of all the roasted beef pupae, and Zhang Lingzi ate half full. I ate the smallest grilled fish and drank some Sephora flour fish soup, but I couldn't eat any more. Zhang Kaiwan thought that there might be leftover food, but he underestimated Su Zhao's appetite and ate all the grilled fish and fish soup. Su Zhao saw his eyes falling on his stomach. While dealing with the food residue, he explained lightly, after this meal, I can guarantee the energy supply for the whole day tomorrow. This is the first time Zhang Kaiwan heard this statement. Is this also a result of training? Zhang Lingzi was originally looking up at the setting sun on the horizon. Listening to the conversation between the two people behind her, she sighed softly in her heart. If it were her original body, she could do what Su Zhao said. This is not a result of deliberate training, but it can only be done when encountering some extreme environments. As for her current body, if she wants to reach the strength of her previous life, she still needs to recuperate. It is easier for 3 people to take turns to watch the night than for 2 people. Originally, Su Zhao and Zhang Kaiwan had to keep vigil, which excluded Zhang Lingzi, but Zhang Lingzi refused. The 3 of them are teammates on the show, and she cannot accept the unconditional care from the other 2 without asking for anything in return. Finally it was agreed that Zhang Lingzi would guard the front section, Su Zhao would guard the middle section, and Zhang Kaiwan would guard the last section. In this way, those guarding the front and rear can sleep the whole night, while those guarding the middle will have a harder time. Zhang Kaiwan was still a little guilty, but after seeing that Su Zhao could also enter the sleep state in seconds, he couldn't help but look at Zhang Lingzi, who was watching the first part of the night. How could this affect him, but why didn't it affect him? What are you looking at, sleep? Zhang Kaiwan. He silently swallowed what he wanted to ask and closed his eyes obediently. When Zhang Lingzi realized that it was almost time, she was ready to wake Su Zhao up. As a result, as soon as she made a little movement, the other party opened her eyes, and then glanced over with sharp eyes. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, X. Press 11. Chapter 65. Chapter 65 Are you afraid of snakes? Zhang Lingzi could now be absolutely sure that people like her and Su Zhao actually didn't need anyone to help keep watch at all. Because even though they seemed to have fallen asleep, they were still subconsciously paying attention to everything going on around them. As long as there is a little abnormal movement, they can wake up from light sleep at the first time. This has even become a habit like eating and drinking every day. Well, Su Zhao covered his mouth and yawned covertly, nodding towards Zhang Lingzi to show that he was awake. You go to sleep. Zhang Lingzi didn't expose his redress. She hummed slightly, leaned her head back slightly against the tree trunk, and closed her eyes. She originally planned to act more relaxed in front of Su Zhao, but after trying for a few breaths to no avail, she decided not to embarrass herself. Su Zhao added a few firewood to the fire in front of him, looked at Zhang Lingzi who was leaning on the tree trunk opposite through the warm orange firelight, and then glanced at Zhang Kaiwen who was still sleeping soundly beside him. The state of these two people after falling asleep can be said to be one day and one day. Zhang Lingzi's sleeping position is very familiar to him, because the sleeping habit he has left for a long time is this kind of posture that can be activated at any time to cope with any emergency. Even when he is asleep, there is still a part of his nerves that are always tense all the time. Being tight. But having such a habit is inseparable from some very special experiences. How did Zhang Lingzi, a female star in the entertainment industry, develop such a sleeping habit? From the day we met until now, the other party has always been so generous and unconcealed, which made him unable to suspect anything. As for Zhang Kaiwen in comparison, Su Zhao felt that only an earthquake or thunder could wake him up. There are still a lot of night owls in the live broadcast room. Suddenly I discovered that Zhang Lingzi and brother Su were in inexplicably similar states when they were resting. However, brother Su used to be a soldier and would inevitably be more alert when sleeping. How did Zhang Lingzi do that? Based on Zhang Lingzi's performance during the show, I have a bold guess. Do you think Zhang Lingzi will have any secret mission when entering the entertainment industry? The people upstairs are a bit too imaginative, don't be scary at night. They also scolded Zhang Lingzi on the internet together. Even though they thought this barrage was a bit nonsense, they still couldn't help but feel a chill down their backs. The key is that she can also shoot arrows. There are many celebrities in the entertainment industry who can do archery, and some can also ski and perform rhythmic gymnastics. Don't you have to be versatile to be a star? The key is that she can not only shoot arrows, but she can also shoot them so accurately. Other celebrities can only shoot fixed targets. Let them try shooting a running rabbit, a flying bird, and a fish in the water. Well, that does make sense. I think I have to go back and look through the comments to see if I have followed the trend and scolded Zhang Lingzi, and delete them quickly. I also. The barrage area was quiet for a while, and everyone was probably looking at their phones. Lu Zhengzhen was staying up late to watch the live broadcast. When she saw these barrage, she couldn't help laughing out loud. She turned over and raised her hand to the white ceiling. Sister Zixi is so powerful. They didn't waste a word this time, and netizens were frightened by what they imagined. When Sister Zixi comes back, she must talk about this matter. Asterisk. After a few hours, not many people can still watch the live broadcast. Su Zhao glanced at the looming morning star on the horizon, then reached out and patted Zhang Kaiwen on the shoulder. Zhang Kaiwen, wake up. Zhang Kaiwen, huh, why did a man call me? He must be dreaming. Su Zhao. He was silent for a moment, and then said, Zhang Kaiwen, it's your turn to keep vigil. Probably the word vigil just hit Zhang Kaiwen's nerves, and he woke up leisurely. When he met Su Zhao's eyes, his head that was still a little confused suddenly woke up. Su, brother Su, come to me. Brother Su, you can sleep, and I will keep watch. Look at the fire, it's a bit cold tonight, don't let it go out. After giving the instructions, Su Zhao sat back and just closed his eyes when one of his arms was suddenly held. The force was so strong that he almost reflexively opened his eyes. Turning around, he saw John Kaiwan's frightened face under the firelight. "Su, brother Su, look at this branch, it seems to have eyes." "Su Zhao. It not only has eyes, but also a tail," Su Zhao said, picking up a branch, picking up the snake that looked like a branch quietly mixed in the firewood pile to keep warm, and flicked it hard into the forest behind him. "Okay, gone, gone." John Kaiwan quickly threw the branch that had just picked up the snake into the fire, and then he felt less uncomfortable. He glanced at the direction where the snake was thrown away, still a little worried. Will it crawl back? Not sure. The two of them looked at Zhang Lingzi, who had just woken up and had opened her eyes. John Kaiwan shrank his neck and said, "Sister Zixi, I'm sorry, I woke you up. It's good to know. Are you afraid of snakes?" John Kaiwan nodded quickly and said, "I have been afraid since I was a child." "Then you still come to participate in this show?" "It's not like I haven't encountered this a few days ago. I thought there was no such thing in this place. We were still outside the jungle for the past few days," Su Zhao explained calmly. "In addition, it rained again in spring. The air in the jungle has become humid, and the snakes will be more active." John Kaiwan suddenly had a bitter look on his face. Zhang Lingzi and Su Zhao looked at each other. "Otherwise, just press this." John Kaiwan glanced at the button on his chest that meant giving up. He hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and shaking his head. "I don't." He gave up because he was afraid of snakes. Fans must not laugh him to death. Su Zhao patted him on the shoulder. "Then we can only work hard to overcome it." John Kaiwan nodded with a white face, then looked at Zhang Lingzi. "Sister Zixi, aren't you afraid?" Zhang Lingzi picked up a small wooden stick that was about the same thickness as the snake just now. "What's so scary about such a small snake? It can't eat people. It can only eat mice and frogs in the forest. And if you don't provoke it, it will. I don't dare to provoke you. If you are really afraid, maybe you won't be afraid if you try snake meat tomorrow." John Kaiwan suddenly shook his head like a rattle. "I don't want it." Zhang Lingzi spread her hands. "Then I have no other choice. I'm going to continue sleeping. Stop talking loudly and be careful to attract that one again." John Kaiwan quickly covered his mouth. Su Zhao shook his head in a funny way. "Miss Gang Zhang is right. If you don't mess with snakes, they won't mess with you. Don't worry. I'm going to sleep too." John Kaiwan kept his whole body tense and forced a smile. "Okay." Now he didn't dare to take a nap by the fire. He simply wanted to watch and listen in all directions. But what you are afraid of often comes, and there is probably such a warm place within a few miles. When John Kaiwan heard the sound of blades of grass being rubbed and couldn't help but turn his head and look over, he saw a large tree under the firelight. Two small and two black and green snakes were snaking towards the side from two directions. For a moment, the whole person froze, and his brain went blank. Seeing that the distance between the man and the snake was less than 3 meters, he couldn't help but break the rules and called for help to the photographer who was keeping watch with him. A bright silver light and an arrow passed in front of his eyes almost at the same time, stabbing each other. In front of the two snakes, the scent of blood that remained on the tips of the knives and arrows carried an invisible threat. The two snakes' marching movements suddenly stopped. After staying in place for a moment, they regretfully turned a corner. John Kaiwan breathed a long sigh of relief and looked at Zhang Lingzi and Su Zhao, who had just taken action together and fell asleep instantly. The words of thanks were stuck in his throat. From then on until dawn, no snake dared to crawl over to scare him. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 66. Chapter 66 Second Team Formation. The warm light fell from the gaps in the leaves, dispelling the gloom all night. John Kaiwan was about to ask the two people in front of the fire to wake up. Before he could speak, Zhang Lingzi and Su Zhao opened their eyes almost in no particular order. The eyes are clear and clear. Zhang Lingzi stood up and pulled out the arrow that was still stuck on the ground. She wiped the dirt on the arrowhead and pulled out the dagger. After wiping the dirt on the tip of the dagger, she turned back towards Su. Throw it in the direction of Zhao. Without waiting, Zhang Kaiwan, who was sitting next to Su Zhao, looked at the flying dagger and exclaimed. Su Zhao had already raised his hand to hold the handle of the dagger accurately, and inserted it from his waist. Thanks. Polite. Zhang Kaiwan. He was silent for 2 seconds and couldn't help but sigh. One of you really dares to throw and the other dares to catch. Zhang Lingzi came back, put the arrow back into the quiver, and asked casually, was the night watch all right last night? Zhang Kaiwan suddenly thought of the 2 snakes crawling over last night and swallowed. I think I need your arrows from Sister Zixi and Brother Su's dagger for protection. Can you let me hold you in my arms during the vigil in the future, in? Su Zhao raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Zhang Kaiwan looked at him and then remembered something. He and Sister Zixi met Brother Su by chance, so they took advantage of the opportunity to have dinner and spend the night together. In fact, they were not a survival group. Thinking of this, he immediately looked at the camera. Director, since Sister Zixi and I can meet in such a big jungle, can we team up with Brother Su for a second time? Li Shuo was sitting on a chair eating instant noodles. He was observing the current status of several guests. Suddenly he saw Zhang Kaiwan's suddenly enlarged face in front of one of the cameras. After listening to his question, he almost died. The mouthful of instant noodles I just put in my mouth spurted out. You are in a big jungle ahead of us and we met by chance. Now that we are talking about this, how can he refuse to agree? If you don't agree, I'm afraid you'll be scolded by the audience for being cold-blooded and don't know how to be flexible. He had no choice but to tell him tiredly, promise him, and also announce that if you encounter other guests on the way to survive, you can form a second team, negotiate with each other to change teammates, or 2 teams can form 1 team. So the cameras shook up and down under Zhang Kaiwan's close gaze. Zhang Kaiwan suddenly showed a big smile and turned his head to look at Su Zhao expectantly. If it had been the first meeting yesterday, Su Zhao felt that he would not have agreed. There is really no danger to him in this jungle, and living there is no different from living at home. He feels more comfortable in a team by himself, and he doesn't have to worry about others. Hundreds of people have hundreds of temperaments. Who knows if you will encounter someone who is not easy to get along with? When the time comes, forming a team will be equivalent to looking for trouble on your own. But after spending an afternoon and a night together yesterday, he felt that although Zhang Kaiwan was a bit useless and a bit cowardly, at least she was straightforward and easy to get along with, and Zhang Lingzi was even different from those weak female stars in his impression. Even he was a little curious as to what this girl had gone through before to develop such an unusual skill, and what other skills he didn't know about. Thinking about it this way, it wouldn't be bad to form a team. So he simply nodded. Zhang Kaiwan's smile suddenly grew bigger when he saw this. With Brother Su on one side and Sister Zixi on the other, I think snakes are not scary anymore. I can run rampant in this jungle again. That arrogant face, as if he was not the one who was frightened and screamed by a small snake last night. Most of the viewers in the live broadcast room had just gotten up. They opened the live broadcast room while washing and eating, and saw Zhang Kaiwan's smiling face. What kind of snake? I didn't watch the live broadcast last night. Was my brother attacked by a snake? Haha, luckily I stayed up until midnight. I remember my brother once said on a program that he was not afraid of anything, but he was slapped in the face last night. He was actually scared and screamed by a snake that was not much thicker than chopsticks. Ahem, please keep your laughter down. My brother also needs to be dignified. As long as we know that my brother likes to be tough-tongued, Aren't most people afraid of creatures like snakes? Zhang Lingzi is not afraid, and I think she knows a lot about snakes. My brother said this probably because Zhang Lingzi and Su Zhao didn't forget to help my brother drive away the snakes when they were resting last night. To be honest, I was touched at the time. Following Su Zhao and Zhang Lingzi, my brother did have full of security. As I said before, I want to watch last night's live broadcast. If you have any friends who can record the screen, please send it to me. At the same time, other guests who were looking for or tinkering with breakfast after waking up early in the morning also received new regulations conveyed by the program team. Sui immediately guessed the truth. It must be that other guests met by chance while traveling and formed a team again. I just don't know whether they should be separated and regrouped, or one person becomes two people, and two people become three people. Zhou Yi held his girlfriend's hand. No matter what it is, we will never be separated. Sui held it back and said, that's for sure. We should be the fastest to reach our destination. It's not that she is arrogant, but that for those who have explored more dangerous areas, the difficulty of this jungle can only be regarded as intermediate, not much of a challenge. If it weren't for the show effect and fear of walking too fast and not being able to take pictures later, they might have gone faster. Lin Jing smiled at the camera. I'll just let it happen. If I can meet other guests, talk, and help each other, that's fine. If not, there will still be everyone in front of the screen to accompany me. The barrage in the live broadcast room immediately gave a blockbuster response. Yu Hui and Zhang Ziyu were woken up by the photographer who came to inform them of the new rules. Yesterday, they first got soaked in the rain during the day, then found that the little rabbit they were raising was dead, and then had to eat it. After such a series of hardships, not only did the two of them almost lose their physical strength, but their mentality was also greatly affected. Torture. Of course it's impossible not to be as harmonious as the previous 2 days. Yu Hui even felt that his brain was covered with a layer of paste, and it wasn't until such a rain that this layer of paste was washed away. But thinking of his previous efforts that had not received much response, he was immersed in the melancholy of the goddess's broken filter, and naturally he was not in the mood to care about Zhang Ziyu anymore. After listening to the new rules announced by the photographer, I just nodded subconsciously. Until Zhang Ziyu on the side asked, is there another guest forming a team for the second time? The photographer just nodded this time and retreated to his seat. Yu Hui, let's hurry up now and see if we can meet other guests to form a team. Yu Hui didn't feel much surprise when his arm was pulled down, he just nodded obediently, okay. Without that filter, he could see clearly just now. Does this mean he felt that he was of no use? Yu Hui lowered his head and smiled to himself. He was stupid enough not to notice it at first. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 67. Chapter 67 Swamp. The two of them had their own things to hide in their minds, and they seemed extremely silent along the way. Even the audience in front of the screen in the live broadcast room felt a hint of weirdness and awkwardness. The show was not interesting in the live broadcast room, and it was not very enjoyable or exciting to watch. Even Zhang Ziyu's fans left silently, let alone the passerby viewers. They came here just to watch the show. Besides this live broadcast room, there are 4 others. Which one should they choose? Every time Zhang Yuding glanced at the number of viewers in the live broadcast room displayed in the upper left corner, she could see that the number was getting smaller and smaller quickly. She couldn't even eat her favorite Japanese food in front of her. Cut to Zhang Lingzi's live broadcast room. As soon as she entered, there was a dense and extremely active barrage. The number of viewers in the live broadcast room in the upper left corner reached nearly 10 million, and it was still growing at a rate visible to the naked eye. She only felt that her throat was getting worse. It's so congested. Did Zhang Lingzi take a panacea or something else? Otherwise, how could she have changed so much? She even had a premonition that she didn't want to admit. In the past, Zhang Ziu's situation of firmly suppressing Zhang Lingzi was about to be broken. As soon as this idea came to her mind, she heard Zhang Ziu take the lead in finding a topic in the live broadcast room. I don't know where Sister Ling 11 and Zhang Kaiwen's team have gone. We shouldn't run into them. Admittedly, she also knew that she did not perform very well in this survival battle, but she was originally a girl and her physical strength was her weakness, so the audience would always be more tolerant of her. Besides, there is Zhang Lingzi who is even more miserable and less expected than her. In contrast, it would only be Zhang Lingzi who would be laughed at. Now that she is already so embarrassed, she really wants to see Zhang Lingzi, who is only more embarrassed than her. Yu Hui was brought back to his senses by her words. He was silent for a moment and replied, "We were delayed for some time, so the possibility of encountering her is unlikely. Sister Ling 11 is also a girl, and it was raining before, so she must not be traveling any faster." At this moment, Zhang Yuding really wanted to rush to the screen and cover Zhang Ziu's mouth. It would be fine if Zhang Lingzi really acted very unbearable. If you say this, it can be understood as a girl's concern for girls. But now Zhang Lingzi's side is so powerful that he even took away Zhang Kaiwen, who was already quite strong. When the audience hears this again, they will only find it ridiculous and like a joke. The good thing is that Hui doesn't think Zhang Lingzi's performance is any better than Zhang Ziu's, then let's try and see if we can meet him. Zhang Ziu curled her lips and began to imagine in her mind that Zhang Lingzi was even more embarrassed than she was. She stepped on Zhang Lingzi. Among the only 3 female guests, she showed that even if she could not get the first place, she could at least be good. Take second place. She was so distracted that she didn't pay much attention to her steps, and Yu Hui didn't considerately explore the way ahead this time. So he stepped down, and a scream resounded through the sky. Asterisk. The further you go, the harder the road becomes. Zhang Kaiwen volunteered to clear the way ahead, and Zhang Lingzi and Su Zhao also let him pick some edible plants. Plants have evolved for more than 1,000 years, and Zhang Lingzi can recognize not many edible plants in this jungle. Su Zhao's role became apparent at this time. There is no need to use the tester issued by the program crew at all. He only needs to take a look to determine whether the plant is edible and whether it is delicious. Zhang Lingzi also picked up a lot of edible food. Su Zhao also discovered something. Although Zhang Lingzi knew far less about the plants in the jungle than he did, Zhang Lingzi could remember the plants that he identified as edible. After that, he can pick it accurately without having to remind him. He looked at it several times with worry and didn't make any mistakes. You must know that some plants look very similar. Even when he first learned to identify edible plants, he made several mistakes and was scolded several times by his old squad leader. What a terrifying talent for discernment. Huh. As soon as he finished sighing, he heard Zhang Lingzi making a somewhat confused sound. He quickly turned his head and looked over. Are there any plants that you can't tell if you can eat them? No, Zhang Lingzi bent down slightly and picked a plant from a bunch of dense shrubs. A flower hidden under the grass leaves, this is water hyacinth blue. Su Zhao looked at the flower in her hand with purple edges and blue center, the name is quite vivid. The key is that this flower usually grows in places with water or swamps. As Zhang Lingzi spoke, she turned her head and looked in the direction of Zhang Kaiwen. When she saw a weeping willow with branches hanging to the ground not far away, her pupils shrank suddenly. Zhang Kaiwen, stop. Although Zhang Kaiwen didn't understand why, he still stopped and asked, what's wrong, Sister Zixi? Su Zhao had already guessed a certain possibility. He picked up a stone from the ground, suddenly raised his hand and threw it in front of Zhang Kaiwen. Zhang Kaiwen watched helplessly as the stone flew over his head and then fell into the grass ahead. But no reply was heard. No matter how soft the grass is, a stone will make a muffled sound when dropped, but there is no sound. Could it be that the ground directly eats the stone? Sure enough. What? Zhang Lingzi walked to Zhang Kaiwen's side, looked down at the ground under his feet, then took 2 steps forward, then pulled out the arrow from the quiver behind him, squatted down and stabbed it towards the ground. Zhang Kaiwen watched helplessly as the arrow, which was about 50 or 60 centimeters long, almost completely submerged into the ground without any effort. When it was pulled out, it was even covered in a layer of gray-black mud. Is this a swamp? Zhang Lingzi pulled off a leaf, wiped the arrow clean and took it back, then nodded, it's a swamp. Zhang Kaiwen was suddenly startled and was covered in white hair. How terrifying the swamp is, even he, who has never seen it with his own eyes, has seen it from TV and books. If a person is trapped in it, there is no way to go to heaven and no way to go. The more you struggle, the more dangerous it becomes. The level of danger is comparable to quicksand in the desert. If you are not rescued in time, it will definitely be the most painful death. But just 2 steps away, he stepped in. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but swallowed dryly, but aren't the swamps I saw on TV all full of mud pits? How come they are similar to the normal ground? Had it not been for this, he would not have noticed any abnormalities. Su Zhao came closer and explained, that's just a type of swamp. There are also this kind of plants that are full of plants that make it difficult to tell whether the feet are a swamp or the ground. The soil here is very good. Zhang Kaiwen only understood roughly what he explained, but Zhang Lingzi understood it deeply. The reason why the soil quality is good is that there are enough fertilizers to provide nutrients. As for where the fertilizer comes from, there must be a lot of animal bones buried under the swamp. Hush, it seems like someone is calling for help. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 68. Chapter 68 Rescue. The 3 of them held their breath for a moment to make sure they heard correctly. Without hesitation, they rushed towards the direction where the cry for help came from. The people in the jungle now are either guests or staff members of the survival show. Even if they are just an unrelated stranger, as long as they hear it, they will not be able to avoid saving lives. Su Zhao ran the fastest, followed closely by Zhang Lingzi, and Zhang Kaiwen fell behind the 2 of them. The photographers carrying heavy equipment originally tried hard to catch up, but after realizing that they could not catch up, one person was left behind and switched to drone aerial photography mode. The other 2 also put down their things and ran forward. It was not until this moment that Zhang Kaiwen and the photographer behind him realized that whether it was Su Zhao or Zhang Lingzi, the speed they were traveling at was already accommodating them. Otherwise they would be exhausted every day if they were traveling at the same speed. The audience in the live broadcast room couldn't help but become nervous when they saw this. Could it be that another team accidentally fell into the swamp? 9 times out of 10, this swamp is really hard to find. It's covered with grass. At least I didn't notice any abnormalities just when I was in the live broadcast room. If it hadn't been for Zhang Lingzi just now, my brother would have fallen into it now, which would scare me to death. I originally wanted to explore the surrounding jungle after watching this show, but now I think I have to be cautious. Just remember what the blue flower called water hyacinth looks like. Zhang Lingzi said that this kind of flower grows near the swamp. If you encounter this kind of flower in the future, walk back immediately. Don't go forward to seek death. One thing to say, it seems that Zhang Lingzi has done a good job in her homework and discovered it earlier than Brother Su. I just went to check out the live broadcast rooms of other teams. The person who fell into the swamp is Zhang Ziyu, Brother Su, and the others are not far from there. There are many people and strength, so they should be able to rescue them smoothly. As the distance got closer, the calls for help became clearer and more piercing. Zhang Lingzi had already heard who was calling for help, so she kept walking and even grabbed a vine that was almost as thick as her wrist. Zhang Kaiwen followed suit. When he saw a vine on the side, he stretched out his hand and pulled one. finally ran to the place where the accident occurred, and the scene was already in chaos. The swamp has swallowed Zhang Ziyu from the waist down. Zhang Lingzi glanced over and saw only her struggling hands and her pale face. Yu Hui was pulled by two photographers. He leaned out and grabbed one of Zhang Ziyu's arms and pulled him up. However, Zhang Ziyu was in a panic and didn't know how to cooperate. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. The three of them saw several people running to help out of the corner of their eyes, and they almost burst into tears for a moment. Yu Hui shouted at the top of his lungs, "Quick, I have a rope in my bag." Just now, Zhang Ziyu suddenly stepped into the swamp. He couldn't react for a moment. By the time he did, he had already sunk directly into his thigh. He didn't have time to grab the rope, so he subconsciously held Zhang Ziyu's hand. As a result, Zhang Ziyu was dragged towards the swamp. Fortunately, the two photographers put down their equipment in time and caught him. The four of them have been in a stalemate like this until now, and no one dares to let go without authorization. Su Zhao took out the rope from his bag, thought for a while and tied a stone to one end of the rope. Hurry to the shore and look for an angle to throw the rope. He wanted to throw the rope to Zhang Ziyu, and he had to control the stone so that it wouldn't hit anyone. Otherwise, his strength would be too much for most people, let alone a weak girl like Zhang Ziyu. Zhang Ziyu kept struggling, and for a while he couldn't find a chance to throw the rope. Zhang Lingzi took a breath and said, "Zhang Ziyu, calm down, everyone is trying to save you." Zhang Ziyu cried without thinking, "Don't make sarcastic comments here. Can you calm down?" Yu Hui's face, which was already red from suppressing the pressure, paled. "Zhang Ziyu, no one can save you if you struggle like this. I'm almost out of strength." At this moment, the hand holding him was a life-saving straw. Zhang Ziyu froze when he heard the sound, and his struggling movements paused. Seeing the opportunity, Su Zhao quickly threw the rope over. Although the action was hasty, the result was good. With Su Zhao's controllable force, the stone fell beside Zhang Ziyu, and he was about to fall into the swamp. Yu Hui quickly reminded, "Ziyu, quickly wrap the rope around your waist, and we will pull you up together." Zhang Ziyu finally calmed down a bit, quickly picked up the rope and wrapped it around him several times. After doing this, she subconsciously grabbed Yu Hui's hand. Unexpectedly, Yu Hui felt sore and shook his hand. Her grasp was empty and she was stunned. Then two dark green vines suddenly flew in front of her, and the splash of mud directly covered her face. Zhang Lingzi held the other end of the vine and reminded, "Grab the vine with both hands." Zhang Ziyu couldn't care less about the mud on his face and subconsciously stretched out his hand to hold it tightly. Then Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwen each pulled a vine, while the others pulled the rope like a tug of war and pulled back with all their strength. Just when Zhang Ziyu felt that her arms and waist were about to be torn off, everyone finally defeated the power of nature and dragged her out of the swamp. After the disaster, Zhang Ziyu sat on the ground for a moment covered in mud, and suddenly burst into tears. It was fear before, now it is fear. It was almost, just almost. If no one had rushed over to help, she would have really died in such a place, or in such a painful way. When others saw this, they all looked at Zhang Lingzi. They were the only two girls present, and grown men like them didn't know how to comfort them, so Zhang Lingzi had no choice but to do it. Zhang Lingzi. To be honest, she is not very good at comforting people. And the person who wants to be comforted is still his opponent. After a while, she finally managed to hold back, "Stop crying, just stay alive." Zhang Ziyu cried for a while. Everyone. Several viewers in the live broadcast room also sweated. This comfort is so hardcore. Haha, these two are supposed to be rivals. It's not easy to say comforting words. Don't force yourself too much. Am I the only one who thinks Zhang Lingzi's face of trying to comfort others is a bit cute? Zhang Ziyu was obviously comforted by the sentence and was stunned. Wouldn't it be effective? Zhang Ziyu really couldn't cry anymore. Just now, when she was struggling desperately in the swamp, she had no time to think of anything else. Now that she had escaped, she realized that Zhang Lingzi also played a role in saving herself. She told herself hard that Zhang Lingzi was doing this for the audience in the live broadcast room and other guests, otherwise she would definitely be criticized for not being kind. Well, that must be the case. She didn't believe that Zhang Lingzi would be kind enough to rush over to save her. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 69. Chapter 69. I didn't expect that the leader of the team was Zhang Lingzi. Such a thrilling thing happened, it would be a little unreasonable not to form a team. Su Zhao was the oldest person present. Seeing Zhang Ziyu and Yu Hui's team in such a mess, coupled with the swamp in front of him that almost hid it from him, he sighed in his heart and took the initiative to form a team. Invitation, how about we go together next time? Of course Yu Hui was 100% willing. This time it really scared him. He thought that the place the program team found would not be too dangerous. Unexpectedly, just half the time passed, they encountered such a big crisis. Besides, since the goddess filter of Zhang Ziyu has been shattered, he can evaluate each other with the same eyes as his teammates. He truly felt that teaming up with Zhang Ziyu would not only make him physically tired, but also mentally tiring. He even wanted to ask, what mentality did you have to come on this show without any preparation in advance? Is it possible that you just want other guest teammates to take care of you? He has been holding this question in his mind for quite some time, and he didn't even ask it. But now when he heard Su Zhao's invitation to form a team, he first looked at Zhang Ziyu, who was still trying to wipe the mud off his face. Zhang Ziyu wiped off a piece of mud on the tip of his nose, lowered his eyes and pursed his lips, a little hesitant. When she met Zhang Lingzi again this time, she was quite surprised when she saw that he had not given up yet and even seemed to be in better condition than her. She felt a little embarrassed. She especially couldn't bear to let Zhang Lingzi see her in such a miserable state. If it were only Su Zhao, she would have agreed decisively. But now there are Zhang Lingzi and Zhang Kaiwen. If they team up and go together, the audience will inevitably judge her and Zhang Lingzi. The key is that she is in such a mess now. We. Looking back at her hesitant look as if she wanted to form a team but was a little hesitant, plus she glanced in Zhang Lingzi's direction several times, I couldn't figure out what she was worried about. Looking at Zhang Lingzi, who was sitting cross-legged on the grass not far away and teaching Zhang Kaiwen how to weave vines into ropes, Yu Hui felt a little complicated. He had always disliked Zhang Lingzi because he often saw this person being bad-tempered and arrogant in the show, and his acting skills were poor in the dramas he starred in. From time to time, the paparazzi exposed him. Everyone laughed at her, and in comparison with Zhang Ziyu, who had all good reviews, in his opinion Zhang Lingzi was nothing but a face. But just now, he also saw Zhang Lingzi running towards the side without hesitation, and even ran ahead of Zhang Kaiwen. He would calmly persuade Zhang Ziyu, who was struggling in the swamp, to calm down. He would throw away the vines and work hard to save others. Those hands that were still red at the moment could prove that the other party had just tried his best to save his opponent. On the other hand, Zhang Ziyu, who had just been rescued, had previously rejected Zhang Lingzi's words to persuade her to calm down. He could still persuade himself that Zhang Ziyu was too emotional and spoke erratically, but now he has reached this point. He was worried about Zhang Lingzi's hesitation in forming a team. He really didn't know how to excuse Zhang Ziyu. I must be really blind. Rubbing his eyes, Yu Hui interrupted Zhang Ziyu's words, nodded to Su Zhao and said, "Let's go together. This thing is indeed too thrilling. It's safer to go together." Zhang Ziyu immediately clenched his fingers. This is the first time Yu Hui has interrupted her. She didn't want to think about what it meant. When Su Zhao looked over, she forced a smile and said, I also think it would be better to go together. Then let's set off now. Zhang Lingzi threw the half-braided rattan rope to Zhang Kaiwen and stood up. The photographer just came over to help rescue people and threw all the equipment on the road. Let's pick it up first and then find a way around it. This swamp road. Zhang Ziyu subconsciously looked at Su Zhao and Zhang Kaiwen, and saw that both of them looked like Zhang Lingzi was in charge of arranging the itinerary, and couldn't help being surprised again. Is Zhang Lingzi being favored because she is a girl, or? Another possibility is that Zhang Ziyu doesn't want to continue thinking about it. She stood up from the ground with a dull expression, looked down at the sticky and wet mud below her waist, opened her mouth but said nothing, and just followed behind in silence with her head lowered. I wanted to light a fire first so that the mud on her body could be baked so that it would fall off as soon as possible, but it would be better to keep it as it is now. The audience would feel sorry for her. Perhaps she will also blame Zhang Lingzi for not caring about her. But soon she no longer cared about all these things. Because the people in front were traveling too fast. Originally, Yu Huizhe had to accommodate her as a girl for the journey ahead, so he deliberately slowed down his pace. Now she was dragging pants and shoes that were several times heavier than before. Even Yu Hui was slightly out of breath, let alone her. After walking for only a few minutes, I was already out of breath and my face was even redder. After enduring it again and again, I still couldn't help shouting to Zhang Lingzi, who was walking at the front, I can't walk anymore, can you slow down a little? At this moment, he had just walked to the place where the photographer put down his equipment. While the photographer was picking up the equipment and readjusting it, Zhang Lingzi stopped and looked back. I wasn't walking fast at all. Jiangzi language. Do you think I will believe it? Su Zhao looked at the crowd and said, currently we don't know how big the swamp is and how long the detour will take. In order to reach the destination within the specified time, everyone should just hold on as long as possible. With these two sentences, Zhang Ziyu's suggestion to walk slower was dismissed. The face he had just wiped clean, and the circles under his eyes were also a little red. It's a pity that Su Zhao and Zhang Lingzi had already met to discuss how to detect the swamp. Zhang Kaiwen was still braiding the rope. Yu Hui also took the opportunity to sit down and rest for a while. Her pitiful appearance was only left to the live broadcast room. Audience. Are you being too indifferent to Zhang Ziyu? He just escaped from death. What can I do if you can accommodate him? The kindness in front of you is commendable. The key point is that this is a survival show to complete the task. Everyone is a guest, not your mother. If you are weak, why do you put aside a relaxing show and don't come to participate in this kind of physical strength? A variety show with endurance, but no self-awareness at all. Sister probably just wants to prove herself. The key person Zhang Lingzi has proved that although her acting skills have been criticized all over the place, there is really nothing that needs to be said in this show. Her performance can be said to be amazing. What has your sister proved? Is she capable of holding back people? Zhang Ziyu should give up on her own initiative before. She was holding back the two-person team, but now I have a hunch that she is about to hold back the other 4 guests. Well, before I returned to the meeting, I accommodated her unconditionally, but now that Zhang Lingzi is leading the team, even if she wants to hold back, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Continue to pay attention. Do you want to bet on how long Zhang Ziyu can last? End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 70. Chapter 70. Why is it Zhang Lingzi again? After seeing Zhang Ziyu slipping and falling into the swamp, Zhang Yuding was so panicked that she even bought a plane ticket to the filming location. Her cash cow can't just disappear like this. When she saw Zhang Ziyu was rescued, she breathed a sigh of relief. But when she saw that Zhang Ziyu was really going to team up with Zhang Lingzi and the others, Zhang Yuding felt her eyes darken. After a few seconds, she recovered and gritted her teeth. It's better to just give up. Now is a good time to give up. A good explanation is that you were too frightened during the show. But if you want to form a team with Zhang Lingzi and the others, aren't you looking for abuse? If you want to remind you not to remind, Zhang Yuding can only be angry for a while, and then look down. She no longer expects Zhang Ziyu to perform well in this program, she just hopes that he won't act too badly. Until the phone rings. After seeing the call clearly, Zhang Yuding quickly exited the live broadcast room and answered the call. Sister Lan, how are you? Is there any chance for my Ziyu? It's hard to say, the voice from the microphone sounded a little embarrassed. You also know that Director Wei is always very harsh in selecting actors. As long as he has an actor he likes, not even the management can beat him, let alone a young person like me. He's a junior assistant director. Not to mention that although this project is a TV series, it is also the one that has attracted the most investment and is the most important to the director in recent years. He is aiming to create a hit drama. Anyway, I see now that Director Wei wants to personally check the small roles, not to mention that your Zhang Ziyu still wants the second female lead. Although she was a little disappointed, Zhang Yuding did not give up. Zhang Ziyu's performance in the survival variety show has been poor. Instead of increasing her fans, she is gradually losing her fans. The company originally said that she would have to wait for several business endorsements that she was going to give her in the past 2 days. Can she not be in a hurry? But if you can get the opportunity to participate in Director Wei's new drama, none of the above will be a problem. Sister Lan, our Ziyu's acting skills are still very good. The directors we have worked with before all praise her for her spirituality. Moreover, this is a costume drama, and she has a relatively classical appearance. I still need to trouble you to say more in front of Director Wei. Well, if the second female lead is not good, we can be the third female lead. After a pause, she gritted her teeth and promised, if this thing is done, I will never treat you badly. After speaking, she comforted herself silently, think about the benefits after the thing is completed. Can the initial effort be called a sacrifice? It is an investment with a very generous return rate. Then, I'll try harder. I don't know if she was moved by the last promise, but Sister Lan softened her tone, but I'm the one who said the dirty words first. Without Director Wei's nod, the others promised nothing. It counts. There is one more thing. After thinking about it, I still feel that I need to tell you. Director Wei mentioned Zhang Lingzi's name several times in the past 2 days, but he didn't say anything else. I'm not sure whether Director Wei I have a crush on Zhang Lingzi. Hang up the phone, Zhang Yuding's face was already full of clouds. Zhang Lingzi again. How come she is everywhere? The ghost is still lingering. She needs to find someone to check out Tong Yu's voice to see if they are watching the same drama. Little did she know that Tong Yu, who she was thinking about, also said the same thing at this moment. Zhang Ziyu is really lingering. A smarter person should have given up on his own initiative. He actually had the nerve to rely on Xiao 11 to hold them back. He is so shameless. Thick enough. Lu Zhengzheng complied and said, Sister Tong, don't be angry. It's not like we don't know. Zhang Ziyu has been so shameless for a long time. Tong Yu said in a sarcastic tone, that's right. If she hadn't debuted under the name Little Zhang Lingzi, she still wouldn't have been able to find this person up to now. She is still capable of getting through today with her thick skin. Lu Zhengzhen's eyes fell on Yu Hui, who was standing in the corner of the screen. I don't know if it's my misunderstanding, but I always feel that Yu Hui is not as enthusiastic about Zhang Ziyu as before. Tong Yu was not surprised by this. Celebrities are also ordinary people. Before, all I saw was Zhang Ziyu wearing a halo in front of the camera. Now that the two of them are in such close contact, their shortcomings will naturally be magnified indiscriminately. This is the goddess filter must be broken, it's time. Lu Zhengzheng suddenly realized, so that's the case. This can explain his transformation. But I think the current Sister Zixi is not much different from the one in the camera. Just 2 words, perfect. Tongyu was amused, no one is in front of you, so there is no need to praise you so harshly. It's not a compliment, I'm telling the truth. Fortunately, Zhang Lingzi didn't live up to her assistant's praise and expectations. Generally speaking, once there are more people in the team, it is easy for different voices to appear. You don't eat this and he doesn't eat that. Some people feel that they should take a rest when they are tired, some feel that they can continue walking forward for a while, some feel that they should go to the left, and some feel that they should go to the right. If you don't agree with each other, you might even get into a quarrel after discussing it. But at this moment, the team of 5 people is in harmony. Even if Zhang Ziya was dissatisfied, he could only hold it in. She looked at the back of the leader who was walking in front, and she felt that it was getting worse and worse. Having just passed through the swamp, the troops divided into 2 groups to find a way. Zhang Lingzi took Zhang Kaiwan with him, and Su Zhao took Yu Hui with him, but he left her where she was considerately and just had to wait. In the end, Zhang Lingzi successfully found a way through the swamp. Before leading everyone safely through this dangerous area, a wooden sign was specially erected with the warning "There is a swamp ahead" engraved on it. She watched from the sidelines, wishing that time could go back half an hour. Just now, her teammates were looking for a way, and she was waiting where she was. Why didn't she think of bringing out this reminder sign? But what she didn't expect was that there would be more to come. It was already afternoon after walking through the swamp. They were lucky enough to encounter a relatively clear water, and immediately decided to stay and rest. There is water and scattered fish in the swamp, but there are 5 of them now and they eat a lot. Eating only fish is obviously not enough. They have to find more prey and collect more firewood to have enough. Zhang Ziya was assigned the easiest job of finding firewood. When she was about to go, she specifically waited for Zhang Lingzi because she felt that Zhang Lingzi should also have a share in this job. Otherwise, whether it is catching fish or hunting, can Zhang Lingzi do it? Just then she saw Zhang Lingzi looking as if she was going to go hunting with Su Zhao. After much hesitation, she couldn't help but ask, "Sister Ling 11, won't you go collect firewood with me?" Before Zhang Lingzi could say anything, Su Zhao, a straightforward man, replied, "It's a bit overkill to let Zhang Lingzi collect firewood. She'd better go hunting with me. If there are too many prey, we can eat enough." Even without a mirror in front of him, Zhang Ziya could feel how ugly his face looked at the moment. Asking Zhang Lingzi to collect firewood is overkill, but what about her? Does that mean she is only qualified to collect firewood? End of this chapter.